Ah, the summer. The sun is hotter, some of you will be out of school on summer break, and some might go to a beach or something. But more importantly, it hosts one of the most cherished events of the year for cheap gamers like me, the Steam Summer Game Sale. It's basically Christmas too, except just replace a sweater with something you actually want. Around this time, I usually pick up a few games, and this summer was no different. When I see a $5 game, I just can't help myself. So I bought a game that I heard was one of the best platformers of all time, Celeste. In Celeste, you play as Madeline, a 21-year-old Canadian woman who travels to Celeste Mountain to try and get over some emotional troubles. Throughout the story, Madeline is separated from and hunted by part of herself which she's been ignoring, and as the game progresses, she comes to terms with the other part of herself. After this, Madeline and her counterpart reach the top of the mountain together and celebrate with all the people they met along the way. Woohoo! Happy ending. Now isn't that nice? It's pretty simple, but if I went through that too quickly, don't worry, it won't be important later. After completing the story, it was easy to see why this game has the following it does. For one, it has the most important part of any game centered around its gameplay, fun movement. When you move as Madeline, it's quick, it's snappy, it just feels good. The lack of delay between when a button is pushed on the controller and what happens on screen, combined with the smooth pixel animations, make Madeline seem bouncy, and also easily controllable. When you move, you know exactly where you're going to end up. But the highlight of the movement is the dash. It's similarly quick and bouncy, with a nice color animation using Madeline's hair instead of a chunky UI element. There will almost never be any UI on the screen at all. It's just you and the platforms. As for the dash, it only works in 8 directions, which may seem limiting at first, but in reality it allows for an extra degree of precision, with different rooms requiring an exact way to dash at many different points of the level. Something else notable about the movement that really surprised me was that there was no unlockable movement abilities, aside from the double dash. Everything you learn in the game was available from the very start, you just didn't know how to do it yet. This gave me that feeling of overpoweredness that I get when I enter an early game area in other games after leveling up, without actually changing anything about the character. The gameplay is even further augmented by the dozens of interactable objects found in the game. For example, we have the Shimmer Block. Even though it's just one platform, you can interact with it in 4 different ways. First, you can use it as a wall by wall clinging to it, or you could use its main purpose and dash through. With this, you can either just die by hitting a wall, or come out the other side. And in that scenario, you can let your momentum carry you, or you can jump as you exit to get a boost. This gives a lot of options, but trust me, there are different objects with even more variety than this one. All in all, the game is a really good platformer. But you probably know this, especially if you played the game yourself. And if not, why would you listen to a guy that doesn't even like platformers all that much in the first place? That's why I didn't really make this video about the majority of Celeste. This video is about Celeste Chapter 9. After the main story ends, you're left with 2 chapters. Chapter 8, which is probably the least enjoyable chapter in the game in my opinion because it limits your dash, aka the thing that makes the game good. And then there's Chapter 9. To even get to Chapter 9, you need to get Crystal Hearts from the first 8 levels, and you need to complete 7 B-sides. The B-sides are just shorter but harder versions of their original counterparts. Chapter 9 though was on a whole different level. You have to learn a few specific techniques to even have a chance of beating it. But even so, it's very well designed. But honestly, I didn't like going through it that much. Like I said earlier, I don't really like platformers. I don't get that feeling of discovery anywhere in such a linear game, and I don't get the satisfaction of defeating a good boss when I finish a room of platforming. When I cleared a room in Celeste, it felt like I had one less room that I had to do, rather than one more boss that I defeated along my way. By this point, you might be thinking, so then, why'd you do it? Why'd you spend 11 hours, over a third of your time in the game, on something you didn't even like or feel anything but relief after beating? Well, you see, in my last video, I talked about 2 different ways in which a game's gameplay can be approached. One way, the way of the achiever, would be to complete as little of the optional content a game has to offer as possible, thus achieving what you have to do to beat the game. On the other side of the spectrum was the completionist, who would engage more often with more of the optional content, with the goal of completing the game, because that's what they find enjoyment in doing. Going with this information, it would be easy to assume that I just had the completionist instinct to finish Chapter 9, and ended at that. The thing is, that's not really true. I didn't play the chapter because of any completionist instinct, I played Chapter 9 because it was a perfect distraction. Throughout my time with video games, I've found that there's 2 separate ways in which I play games. One, as an experience where I'm immersed in the world and story, and the gameplay helps foster the relationship between me and the narrative. And 2, as a distraction, where I'm not really immersed in the world of the game, and I'm just playing it for the gameplay. These two ways of playing aren't exclusive to specific games. A game could start out as an experience, then morph into a distraction, or vice versa. By saying this, I don't mean that there's something wrong or worse about playing a game focused on gameplay. A lot of times, just a game's gameplay can be very enjoyable. But it was when I was doing rooms over and over again that I got no enjoyment out of when I realized. I was doing this pretty much just to waste time. When I would play a distraction, I would first put on my AirPods and listen to some video essay on YouTube, then put my headphones on over them, turn the game music down, and play the game. Chapter 9 was perfect for this. It had everything I needed to listen to something else and feel like I was always free to do anything. You can beat all of it without sound. There are sound effects, but none of them were crucial to the gameplay in my experience. The rooms are hard enough to keep your brain at work so that you won't be thinking of anything else. There's almost no story element to distract you from what you're listening to on the side, which helps me because I find it hard to read and listen to words at the same time. And lastly, it can be paused at any moment, which is nice when I have to change videos or answer a message. All of this together kept my mind on what was on the screen and what was playing in my ears. There wasn't any room for anything else. This to me is a pretty good de-stressor, but the main question still remains. Why choose this over an experience? The experience is obviously more fun and you're not gonna make any memories by yourself when you're just in a distraction, but after a bit of thinking, I think I realized the reason why I kept choosing distractions over experiences, and that reason is time. I don't know how often this happens to people other than me, but lately I've been looking a lot at how long a game takes to complete before I start it. Doing this has led me to play shorter games than I usually would. Recently, I've played Firewatch, Donut County, and What Remains of Edith Finch. All very short games, and I played each of them in one sitting. This made it so that there was very little commitment coming into each of the games. Take for instance Donut County. I didn't really like the gameplay loop all that much, and the story didn't really pull me in. But it was only 2 hours long. Even though I didn't think it was that great, there wasn't much harm in finishing it out to the end. It was just 2 hours. Though Donut County was more of a distraction, Firewatch and Edith Finch were definitely experiences, and good ones at that. However, their length led me right back to Celeste challenges, of which I could play hours on end. This created a paradox of sorts. In a world where time is a commodity, I didn't want to waste it with the risk of being sucked into a lengthy experience, but in the process, I did that same thing with a distraction. I was afraid of the commitment that a longer game would require. What if I figured out that I didn't like it? Then I would have wasted all that time figuring out. Even worse, what if I figured out I did like it and went too far down the rabbit hole? These stakes are what led me to take the more comfortable route of just sticking to something I'm not really invested in, instead of committing to something new. But my fears were unfounded. Right now, for a few weeks at least, I have all the time I could possibly want to play a game. I don't have too much time to waste, and even if I didn't, a truly good experience isn't a waste of time at all. I decided that I had had enough with distractions, so I went out of my comfort zone and started playing Elden Ring. Writing this, I'm about 10 hours in, and this game is pretty good. I don't have much to say yet, though the exploration is really top notch, but that's besides the point. What I'm really trying to say is that games can be great distractions, and that's useful a lot of the time. Getting invested sometimes takes effort, and that isn't always what we're looking for. But don't let the distraction distract you from trying something you may really enjoy when you have the chance. Thanks for watching, guys. This was a more feelings-based video, and I really hope you liked it. When writing this, I honestly didn't know the answer to the central question of the video. But if you like videos about specific concepts more, make sure to tell me in the comments. I'm always open to suggestions. With that said, don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you next video. Peace.